Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for scriptwriting information in print and on the web. And by Final Draft scriptwriting software, the entertainment industry standard for scriptwriting worldwide. My name is Gray Jones, and I'm the host of the TV Writer Podcast, partner of Script Magazine, and today is episode 19 for Monday, April 25th, 2011, and I am so excited today because for the very first time on the podcast, we are having a round table discussion. I have some really exciting guests to introduce you to, and this round table podcast is all about social networking for the writer, specifically for the TV writer, but I'm sure this is applicable for feature writing and other types of writing as well. I'm going to first start with some stats. In the United States, 65% of U.S. adults use social media. Yet, this is new. Facebook is only 7 years old, and Twitter is only 5 years old. And what we're talking about 7 years ago, it was a guy in a Harvard dorm room in his laptop. So they really haven't begun to have impact until many years after their birth. So for Facebook, it's really only the last 3-4 years that it has started to have a big impact. For Twitter, really only a couple of years. And so we are just at the cusp of something huge. There are very few people that even appreciate where this can head. It's so new that there are almost no resources available. Everyone is figuring it out as they go. This means young and or entrepreneurial writers are going to write the rules and take opportunities that didn't exist before. Another way to put this is that most of us are missing out on incredible resources. There are now over 700 writers on the TV Writer Twitter database, and yet there's only 56 people who are subscribing to the list. The WGA East Facebook group only has 936 members. The WGA West one is not much better, about 1,200 members to their Facebook group when their actual membership is about 8,000. I can't even find a Facebook group for the WGC. So we're going to talk about social media for the writer. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, this is a huge topic, and we can't do this. We can't really do this service, but I hope that we can introduce some ideas that get you thinking, that we can give you some resources that can help you start interacting on a much better level than what you've been able to accomplish so far. So let me introduce our exciting panel. First of all, we have West Coast and web editor of Script Magazine, co-owner and producer of Modjeska Playhouse Theater Company, part-time actor, currently living in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 pups. We've got Joshua Stecker with us. How you doing, Joshua?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate you joining us. I know you've got a hugely busy schedule, including a New York trip coming up.
That's what they tell me, yes.
Yeah. And as well, you've probably seen her on Twitter, Jeanne Livingston, writer and co-founder of Scriptchat and president of Romance Writers of America, Screenwriting Chapter Script Scene. She's a business owner and former magazine writer. How you doing, Jamie?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Glad you could be with us. And as well, we've got Jeanne Veillette Bowerman. She's the co-founder and moderator of the weekly Twitter Screenwriters Chat, Scriptchat, and also a regular columnist for Write On Online and Script Magazine. You may have seen her balls of steel. A graduate of Cornell University, she's written several spec scripts, including the adaptation of the Pulitzer Prize-winning book Slavery by Another Name, with its author Douglas A. Blackmun, senior national correspondent of the Wall Street Journal. She recently blogged about that experience. Awesome stuff. How you doing, Jeanne?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here.
You're very welcome. And I'll be moderating a little bit more about me. My name is Gray Jones. I'm a reality TV editor and produced writer, also an internationally award-winning short film producer. In addition to hosting the TV Writer Podcast in partnership with Script Magazine, I also host Chuck versus the Podcast for NBC's Chuck, which has been voted the #1 TV-themed podcast in the entire world continuously for the last 28 months. I also run a database of TV writers on Twitter, which contains over 700 writers and continues to climb. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about social networking, but specifically I want to limit our discussion a little bit because social networking is a very broad topic, and the broader it is, I think the less useful it's going to be. First of all, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is awesome. It's not what we're going to talk about today, except for a little bit. It's very used in the industry, but it's less as a social network and more sort of for resumes and job info. And I encourage you to use LinkedIn. It's a great way to connect with people on a job level, but it's not exactly social in the sense that we're going to be discussing today. So we're primarily going to focus on Facebook and Twitter. I'm going to mention a few stats, and then I'm going to open it up for our roundtable discussion. First of all, Twitter is more interactive. 12% of Facebook users update their status every day versus 52% for Twitter. Twitter is more US based. 70% of Facebook users are outside the US versus 60% for Twitter. Facebook is more closed. Facebook tends to be something that it started out at least as something that you would interact with your family and close friends. And so it's designed around keeping people out except for the people that you're interacting with that you've approved, where Twitter is designed to interact with people outside the box. And we'll discuss a little bit more of that later. Facebook is very ubiquitous. It's got 600 million users. 71% of web users in the US use Facebook. But in the US, its growth is declining. I think it's hitting the point where people who are going to use Facebook probably already are. Its primary growth now is outside the US. With Twitter, by comparison, there's 200 million, but this is double last year's number, and we can expect it's going to double again this year and continue to grow. Already 55% of web users in the US use Twitter. So Twitter is coming on strong. It's newer, but it's growing very, very fast. And also very important to our discussion, Twitter is kind of seen as the newer, more hip kind of thing. But don't think I'm slamming Facebook. There are a lot of very, very useful things you can do for Facebook, and we will talk about those today. But right now, let's open it up to our panel, and I'm sure some of the things I said were a little provocative. What are your opinions about Facebook and Twitter? Who wants to start?
Ladies first.
Oh, I'll go. This is Jeanne. Facebook I don't use as much as I use Twitter. Twitter is my baby. It's where I groove. It's where I connect with people. I'm just starting to figure out Facebook more. I think Facebook works great for novelists because you can put an author page up, which I have, but it's not quite the same for me. And if I can get any tips from Jamie or Josh on how to use Facebook better, I'm all for that. I know much more about Twitter and navigating through Twitter and connecting with people that way in a really organic way. But I think the one thing that really is most important in social networking is being yourself, being totally real, letting yourself be vulnerable. Don't just tweet out, pimping the things that you want from people, go look at my link, go give me crowdsourcing money, gimme kind of stuff. Show them personality. And it's really easy to do on Twitter because you're connecting, you're talking to people. And that, for me, is what makes it successful.
Mm-hmm. And Jamie?
Well, I started Facebook. My teen employees set me up with an account, and it was kind of embarrassing. They were my first friends on Facebook, all teenage boys. Yeah,
Awesome.
I know, scary. But I've reached out and I've expanded and included writing people. At first, I was reluctant to have people from Twitter be friends with me on Facebook because I saw it more as a friends and family type of social networking and, getting back in touch with old friends, my college roommate, old friends from when I used to rodeo and live out in California that I don't keep in touch with. And just recently I've expanded to the writing people and the people on Twitter and kind of let them in, because that's my personal life, whereas Twitter is my sounds so terrible, but my social life.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And Joshua?
Jamie and I have the exact same kind of definition regarding Facebook via Twitter. Facebook, I try to keep it personal. I don't approve everybody who friend requests me on Facebook. I try to keep it for the people I've actually met in real life or actually have some sort of relationship with, maybe, outside of, a Twitter panel or even email for that matter. Twitter for me is just, it's social. It's fun. I've met a lot of great people off Twitter. And it's something that I find that's been useful as far as, gain information, more so than anything. I use it as more of a news feed, than I do maybe even the social aspect of it. I think it's more important to me as a news source. Actually, I shouldn't say news source, a news aggregator, because it comes from different sources. But that's really the basic difference between Facebook and Twitter for myself. Like Facebook, is pretty personal, and Twitter, I could kind of just, have fun, be myself, but at the same time, kind of keep a distance and, let in or let out whatever I want. Mm-hmm. So from a business aspect though, I guess I can talk about a little bit about how I work with script. Mm-hmm. Sure. The Facebook and Twitter are go hand in hand. I mean, they're pretty much, one without the other wouldn't work as well. Twitter, is a news aggregator for our Facebook site where we post the links of all the stories that go up on scriptmag.com. So like when Jeannie's column goes up, the first thing I do, I'll post it on Facebook, and that link will go out through our Twitter feed, and then that Twitter feed gets retweeted by a bunch of people, and they all end up going to our Facebook page first, because the Facebook page is the link, and if they aren't a fan of the Facebook page yet, hopefully they become a fan, and then they go straight to scriptmag.com. And from what we found with our research and stats with Script Magazine is that the majority of our traffic for scriptmag.com comes from Twitter and Facebook. Because of that. So, so that's that.
Yeah, I've found I was a little skeptical of Twitter at first, and I just found as I was using it more and more as exactly that, as a news aggregator, I go far less often to the news sites, because the reality is, I mean, and we know this from any time big news has broken, like Michael Jackson's death and the tsunami, that you hear about it on Twitter before CNN has it.
Absolutely.
And luckily CNN's got a great Twitter account now too, because they've discovered this. But the fact is that this, as a news source, it's obviously not as detailed, but you can find stuff out very fast. And also because it's user based, it doesn't necessarily have the editorial slant on things. You'll find links from all kinds of different sources, depending on the people who you choose to follow. I do find with Facebook, and I've gone through a very interesting transition with Facebook. I started it as what everybody else did, a great way of sharing pictures with my family and that kind of thing. I actually ran into a situation where I had confirmed somebody on my Facebook who was a competitor, and they actually used information from my Facebook to basically get a leg up on me on something.
Oh, a jerk.
Yeah. And so at that point, I realized what many of us have realized, that even with a closed system like Facebook, that we really have to be very protective of our privacy. And so I went digging through Facebook to try to see how to do that. And I realized, as I'm sure many of us know, that you can actually have different levels of security for the people that you've connected with on Facebook. And that just got me thinking, well, maybe I can use my Facebook to connect with people I don't know as well, people that I'm reaching out to. And so what I've done is I've set up a security level where all my personal family stuff is hidden from that security level, but regular status updates and things like that in my wall aren't. And so now I can approve anybody who connects with me on Facebook, and I don't have to worry about those privacy issues. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I get my children to teach me those tricks.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons I set up a Facebook author page. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like I was getting so many screenwriters and writers coming to my Facebook page, and it was starting to kind of make me a little uncomfortable. Like I wasn't sure, like Jamie was saying, do I accept? Do I not accept? This is my nest, mm-hmm. you know? And I think it is important to have boundaries, but I haven't quite figured them all out yet. I'm still pretty transparent, but I decided to set up the author page because then, and I have found that there's quite a few people who are fans of my author page who are not my friends on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And that's where I post a lot of my writing. And also I felt like whenever I post an article that I've written or a blog post, that's really all my feed was starting to look like. I didn't have a lot of time to interact on Facebook. So it felt almost too cold, you know, for who I am. So mm-hmm. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do all that stuff on my author page, and I'm going to keep my Facebook page
just me,
just, you know, more genuine, more me, more connecting with, you know, friends and family and people like that.
Yeah. And that's a very valid point. Whether pages or groups, you can set up events through Facebook. There are a lot of different ways that you can use Facebook to reach out to people that don't necessarily betray your private secrets. But also you can use it as I mentioned with limiting the security levels for different things. You might just have one that is a catch-all for anybody that you don't know. You approve them, but you put them into this group that has the higher security settings.
Like, how do you find this? Do you remember how to find this secure little thing for the people listening who might want it?
You just go into your privacy settings in your account settings in Facebook, and you can
stalker alert.
You categorize people, don't you?
You have your stalker group. You have your
stalker group.
And so you can get all those details there. And for a lot of the things we say, I do encourage you, if you're interested in this stuff, all the information is available online, and you can research this on your own. But the reason that I mention that in particular is that I have found through both the Script Magazine podcast and also with the Chuck podcast that I've been able to make some incredible networking connections mm-hmm. through Facebook. I mean, a lot of the showrunners that I've interviewed for the podcasts have come directly through me just doing a search on Facebook for their name, sending them a message and connecting with them that way. And what ends up happening is with a lot of them, I enter a dialogue and I can start talking with them, and the relationship continues long after the interviews. Now I have a little bit of an advantage that, of course, I can say when I'm reaching out to them, I do this podcast in partnership with mm-hmm. Script Magazine, but at the same time, I do know a lot of people have shared with me that they have connected randomly with people that way. And as long as you just are genuine, you say, I'm a writer who's starting out and I'm trying to make connections, you'll find a lot of them will say no, but some of them will say yes, and those are the ones you want.
Well, you know, the funny thing is I didn't actually see Facebook as a networking type of, I mean, I know it's called social network, but I didn't see it as that type of networking. But when I reached out before this podcast to some people, I guess Aaron Sorkin used to be on Facebook, and he offered up some, I guess, quite juicy tidbits on, you know, things that he thought writers should know. And then, you know, the person who told me about him was saying all of these people she'd met through Facebook. And I thought, wow, because I just don't think the stalker thing like Jeannie was talking about, mm-hmm. I feel like if I went through and tried and wanted to be friends with those people because they didn't have a fan page, or, you know, I don't know what they call it now, but it used to be a fan page, that you're kind of like, you don't want to friend somebody who has no idea who you are. But I realize now that if they have that many fans, that they're going to have a fan page, and you can stalk without them knowing you're stalking them.
Yeah, and the fan page, I think, is how a lot of them handle it. Because I have seen some of the bigger name people say directly on their page, on their info page, that, you know, please do not request me if you do not know me. And if I may not know you, but you think I should know you, at least mention why you think I should accept your request, you know? And if I don't accept it, then just go to my fan page and you can find out stuff about me and follow what I'm doing or whatever. Some people, I've seen some people in the industry do that very openly, sort of state what their personal policy is on it. And I've also seen people tweeting out things like, do not send me a connect request on LinkedIn if I don't know you. I don't want you as part of my professional network. But I've seen other people say, please find me on LinkedIn, please find me on Facebook. And it's interesting. Everyone has their own personal comfort level of, how deep they're willing to go with people. And Twitter is pretty, you can pretty much stay sort of on the surface, because it's not like there's a link on your Twitter homepage where there's pictures to your family, photo album. And there's a lot more anonymity if you choose to have that on Twitter. But I'm pretty open.
And you're right. I have an anonymous account that has nothing to do with writing. And there's nothing that links back to me, and nobody knows it's me. And I can rant and rave and say whatever I want, and it can't go back to me. Not that I don't rant and rave on my current.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jane.
I know. But that's my outlet. You don't. Well, you know what? own the restaurant.
I follow your crazy side.
Yeah. Well, okay. So those are some of the things that we need to know about Facebook, and I would encourage you to just check those out. And before we move on to Twitter, and we will move on to Twitter, one thing I would say in my experience with dealing with these people, just like Jeanne said, everybody has their own comfort level, but not just a comfort level. People have sort of their chosen ways of networking, and also another thing I would say before that is the Aaron Sorkins are not who you should be networking with anyway. The guys who are way up in the clouds are way beyond the level where they're going to be helping baby writers. The people that you do need to connect with are people who are not in the spotlight. And those are the people who probably have a lot more open connections because they don't have hordes of people coming at them. And so you're much, much more likely to be able to enter a dialogue with them, to be able to connect with them, even get some help from them. So I would say once somebody gets to that fan page level, what you put on that fan page, you're interacting with other fans of that writer. You're not really interacting with that writer. Whereas if you can interact with somebody who's maybe not at that level yet, you're actually interacting with the writer, his or herself. So that can
Very true.
Yeah, that can be an important point. And as well, just like a lot of the wisdom out there will tell you, befriend the assistant because they're going to be the showrunner later. By the time you get to the point where you're ready, that's when they're going to be at a point that they can help you. Some people only connect through Facebook, don't even know about Twitter. Some people only use their Twitter, barely use their Facebook. And so try both. Use them each to their greatest advantage. Now that we've talked about Facebook, and I think most people know a lot about Facebook already. Less people know about Twitter. Just to define Twitter a little bit, Twitter is very similar to the status update part of Facebook, where you post status updates and anybody who's following your status updates can see them. You don't have to approve the people who are following you, but you can block them if you choose. Every time somebody follows me, I do look at their profile and I do gauge whether I want them to be following me. If they're a spammer, obviously I don't, and I block them and actually report them for spam. And so you do have some control over the people who are following you, but tweets are public. So anybody can go to a web page and see your tweets if they want. There are private messages. They're called direct messages, which are very similar to the private messages inside Facebook, where only you and the person you're interacting with will see that message. And there's also ways of targeting your tweets to other people. They're called @. So if I want to say I'm not following Jeanne and Jeanne's not following me, if I put her address with a little @ sign before it, then she'll get that tweet even if neither of us are following each other. So that
and
means
to send those private messages, you have to both be following each other.
Yeah, direct messages. Or actually, more accurately, you can send a direct message to somebody who is following you, but they can't reply back until you're following them. Yes. Which usually makes them annoyed. So make sure you are following them.
Or they'll give you a public tweet saying, "Hey, I can't respond because you're not following me."
That's usually what happens. And so let's open it up to discussions about Twitter. So what are some of the things that you have seen about Twitter with relation to writers?
For me, I think one of the best things and most surprising thing about Twitter in terms of my craft of writing is learning how to tell a story and say a viewpoint or get a point across in just 140 characters. Mm-hmm. It's a great lesson in editing your words. And there was one day I was in Starbucks, and I have this sort of reputation of being a bit of a coffeehouse voyeur. And I will tweet out little stories that I'm watching while I'm sitting there. And I've actually had agents approach me after this one story I tweeted out of this lover's quarrel in Starbucks, where I was only tweeting, I couldn't hear their words, but I was just tweeting their body language.
Wow. And
I had hundreds of people like on the edge of the seat wanting to know what happened to these lovers, like where this argument was going to go. And then I had an agent respond to me. Yeah. I had an agent respond to me saying, I cannot believe what you expressed in 140 character bits. And she's like, when you get done with your novel, you have to call me.
Wow.
It's so you can really, even in a tweet, you can showcase your writing voice.
Yeah. And that
surprised me. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And that's why I would urge you, even though there are, one thing that I didn't mention about Twitter is that your tweets are limited to 140 characters. And if you want somebody to retweet, their retweet has to fit in 140 characters. So typically you try to make your messages 120 characters or less so that people can retweet you, which is basically passing on your tweets to other people. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, it's really, really helped me in terms of economy, in terms of word choices, things that are very, very helpful for script writing because, trying to write, especially condensing something like a novel into a script, there's not a whole lot of words that go into a 100-page script. There's a lot of white space on the page. And so the more you can economize your writing and tell stories with less words, that is a very helpful skill. I would encourage you not to use the lengthener feature on tweets. They are a pain. Basically, what they do is they say, you can tweet longer than 140 characters, but you have to go to another web page, and I will rarely follow them. And because I personally think they're just a pain, and it shows a little bit of laziness on the part of the writing.
I agree.
I concur.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. What other things can you say about Twitter?
Well, it's the connections. I mean, that's here's the thing for people who've never been on Twitter before, and this is what I hear from everybody. Well, what do you do there? How do you even know who to follow? How do you connect with people? And when I first started, you connect with all of the famous people at first because you don't really know of anybody else to connect with. And then you might see somebody else who responded to something that they said. And then you're like, oh, that person seems cool. And then you start, I don't even know how I ended up where I ended up. It just seemed to expand all by itself. And I had been on a Yahoo group with Zach Sanford, and next thing I know, he's following me on Twitter, and he introduced me to Jeanne and a former writing partner of hers, and everything just snowballed from there. And this is gosh, just a little over a year ago, and I would say in the last year I have 3 times the followers that I had, and it's what I tweet about has really narrowed to more of a focus, whereas it used to be about everything. Now it's mostly about writing, and anytime you're in a slump, tweet out, because I tell you, you will get the most support. Yeah. But you look at what other people are saying, and then you see maybe the people who are following them, and if you don't really know, like some of the kids who work for me now are just now getting on it, and they don't say anything, but they read everything. And that's how I was at first. I would read through everybody's feeds and, be a voyeur into other people's lives. And it was awesome. It was cool. And then finally got up the guts to start saying a few things myself. And I know this is going to sound really cheesy, but Ashton Kutcher, I really have to thank him because well, when he was making his movie Five Killers, you know, and same with Rob Luketic and Dana Brunetti and those guys. Yeah, those are the guys who are so far up there that you're only really talking to their fans, like you were saying. Mm. But they posted some really interesting stuff, and then when the movie premiere came out, Ashton had a live Ustream, I think it was, and he had taken some of the people who had tweeted with him and used them as his commentators on the red carpet.
Wow.
And I ended up, for lack of a better word, meeting Bob DeRosa, who was the original writer of Five Killers. Well, it was Killers when it came out, but Five Killers when he wrote it. And oh my gosh, Bob is like the most incredible person ever. And if it hadn't been for Ashton Kutcher, this sounds so strange, I would never have watched the Ustream, and I never would have gotten in contact with this incredible writer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I mean, some amazing things like that can happen. But before they happen, they involve some things. You can get a lot of tips online about how to tweet smarter. As a matter of fact, there's a Twitter stream called Tweet Smarter to make sure that you are abiding by proper etiquette for tweeting. I've seen Jeanne rant a little bit about some of the cons, some of the things that people shouldn't do. Why don't you give us a few don'ts with Twitter?
Well, I'd written an article for Writer's Digest. It was actually my very first freelance article that I got paid for. And I met Jane Friedman at the time. She was publisher of Writer's Digest on Twitter. And then I expanded on that and started a social media a website actually about social media called smwriters.com. Mm-hmm. And on there I have some of the some basic Twitter tips. And then I also had done a piece on Twitter for Script Mag, and I noticed yesterday somebody, so I noticed in the comments yesterday on that piece, I don't know what made me go back to it. And this one person had said they thought it was arrogant what I had said as a suggestion, which was, I suggested that you never pitch someone in a tweet who you don't know, you don't have a relationship with, you don't do that. And she thought it was very arrogant of me to say that. And I actually did respond yesterday, and I still stand by what I say. It's just like if you see somebody in
I agree with you 100%.
Producer, like you see a producer in a restaurant, and he's engaged in his own conversation in the restaurant
with his family.
Just because you're in the same restaurant with him, just like you're in the same Twitterverse with that person, doesn't mean that you can walk up to their table and pitch them. Yeah, the industry is about relationships, and you still have to build that relationship. And let's take Dana Brunetti for instance. He's a great. He's so much fun on Twitter. He's there. He's open about his stuff. He talks openly to people. And I'll tell you, I've tweeted him. I remember once, this was when I first started Twitter, I was doing this whole thing one day about, my messy desk. Like if I could turn this webcam around. And it was like, okay, whose desk do we want to see? And I tweeted him. I think Jamie even said, let's see Dana's, so I tweeted him, and he immediately tweeted out a picture of his desk. People are approachable. And then we ended up having him as a guest on Scriptchat later on, but I certainly wasn't going to ask him in my first tweet to him if he would be a guest on Scriptchat. It's just, you have to be respectful of people. And just because they're on a social media network doesn't mean that they want to be inundated. Can you imagine getting on Twitter and all you see in your feed is a bunch of pitches to you? Wow. Nobody wants to see that. That's not what they're there for, so respect it. So that's one thing I would definitely say not to do. I personally would not recommend protecting your tweets, because when somebody follows me and their tweets are protected, I don't follow them back. Not unless there's somebody I know in some way, shape, or form. Because that's not what this is about. This is, so I'm not a big fan of protected tweets. Mm-hmm. I'm also not a big fan of seeing somebody's tweet stream that's just nothing but retweets. I want to know what your voice is. Right. I want to know who you are. I'm not sure what else.
Or a pile of links.
Yeah. Or just a pile of, hey, here's my indie film project, please give me money. You know, there's definitely times when there's indie film people who I follow and I love, and when they're in that big push for the deadline of Kickstarter or whatever, there's tons and tons of tweets about help me, help me, help me. And I get that. That's totally cool. I have no problem with that. But when you're not in the big push, then, you know, talk to people, engage people, and, you know, really have conversations with people. Just, you know, keep it real. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't present this that you're bigger than you are. You know, just be a genuine person, and that will attract more people for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that, and one of the things I would add, and I'm a big proponent of personal branding, but even more than just the personal branding aspect of it. And I've seen on Twitter, I think Jeanne, you also mentioned this. Whenever somebody follows you on Twitter, or even actually what can happen is sometimes there's discussions that happen on Twitter, and you're just interested in what somebody says, and so you check them out, and you want to see if they're worth following from the discussions that have been happening, and so you go to their profile page on Twitter, and if you see a picture of the person and a little bio that looks interesting, and it looks like their tweets are you know, genuine, and there's a mixture of either helpful things or interesting things, not just retweets, then there's a very high likelihood of following that person. If you go to their profile and the picture is something completely meaningless,
an egg,
or a bird, or something like that, it's all of a sudden a little bit of a warning flag. Does this person really want to interact with me? Then you go to their bio. There's nothing in the bio. Then
I won't follow people with nothing.
Yeah, you don't even bother with those people.
Yeah, you don't even bother. Or if the bio is something like this, just completely random, there's a lot of spammers that put up even a nice picture of a person, and then something pretty random in the bio. Yeah, usually in a bikini, or just actually they've gotten a little better, and they're doing just a respectable looking female.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of those. Yeah,
a lot of those, and just something random in the bio, something random in the Twitter feed. So how do I know you're not a spammer? Put up a picture of yourself. I mean, hey, get somebody to take a nice picture at Christmas or whatever, and put a little bio that actually says something about you. And that's half the battle in connecting with people. You may say, why is nobody following me? Well, what do you have on your profile page?
I agree. If someone's following me, I'll go in and look, and if they don't have a bio, then I'm like, well, what reason would I want to follow you back? And I don't follow back. And give somebody a reason to want to interact with you. That's what Twitter's all about.
Well, you get out of it what you put into it. That's kind of what I've discovered with the whole Twitter thing, especially because I have the unique operation of not only working my own personal Twitter feed, but also Script Magazine's Twitter feed. And it's weird, you know, doing the whole, the marketing aspect from a magazine's perspective. And because I try to follow everybody who follows Script. And the reason being I try to follow as many people who follow Script is because I want to know what's going on. I want to know what all these people who are following the magazine, I want to know what they're writing about. I want to know what they're doing. And I want to know, you know, what's going on. And that feed just constantly scrolls like nobody's business. And one of the things that annoys me, I understand it from a personal standpoint that people don't want to follow so many people. Like you have like somebody who has like a bazillion followers and only follows like 10 people. There's no real back and forth there. It's more like, look at me rather than, you know what I mean? I want to know what you guys want to say. So I find that interesting that some magazines and some companies do that, which I find is very ridiculous. Because you don't get what's going on. I would have never met Jeanne had it not been for Twitter. Or Zach or any of the guys at Scriptchat had it not been for Twitter. And that's because when I took over the Twitter feed, when I basically started, because I'm the only one who runs it, I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to know what was going out there. I wanted to know who's, you know, if somebody has a success story, if somebody has anything worth listening to. And we found that through the magazine and through the Twitter feed. From a personal branding point, I mean, I get what everybody's saying regarding you just want to be real. You know, I mean, I'm I'm real on Twitter. I don't put on a facade. Sometimes you rant and rave like I did a couple days ago with an insurance company I'm dealing with who I got rear-ended last week about. And so I had a little fun with that. But like, like you mentioned, like Dana's great. Dana's cool in regards to Twitter. So we talk all the time on Twitter. And he understands incredibly the importance of social media. In regards to, what he's got going on with Trigger Street and everything. But there are a lot of other great people, great screenwriters. John August is another one who's a great guy on Twitter. And there's a handful of writers who listen, who kind of put themselves out there to listen, and by proxy, they gain the respect of those who follow them. And that is something that if you have somebody's respect, that boundary line that we talk about, it kind of is a moot point at that point, unless you get some crazies. I mean, you should check out Script Magazine's direct message feed. I mean, people pitch us all the damn time on the craziest stuff, and I can't respond to it. It's like, what are you gonna do? But more power to you. But
one of the nice things you do, Josh, is when people talk to Script Mag account and they don't necessarily know it's you who's running it.
Right.
They get so excited when you respond back to them as Script Mag.
Yeah.
They get it means something to them, And so I imagine then the flip side of that is then they feel they can send you the DM pitching you.
Oh yeah. That is the flip side of it. But that's the point though too. That's the point. I want people to feel like the collective the business are listening to those out there. And it's true, because I am. I mean, I'm online, connected basically 24/7. Whenever somebody at Scripts Mags me, I get a message on my cell phone. My thing goes off all the time. So it's not,
Your wife must love
my
that.
wife loves it, trust me. But I feel like I have to, because you never know what can happen. You never know what's going on. I don't want to miss out on anything.
Yeah. Well, and that raises a very, very important point that's applicable both on the company level and also on the personal level. The reason that you're able to do that for Script Magazine is because you are the designated tweeter for that magazine. Companies have to realize you got to assign somebody to it.
Correct. And it's silly that there are so many companies, and I can only speak for like entertainment publication magazines, or I can only speak for Script Magazine itself, but those in our genre, our field, they're slowly coming to terms with getting there. But by and large, Twitter's personal. In a sense, and it is personal. When I said that it's used as a news aggregation feed, it is, but by and large, I joined Twitter in March 2008 when I was following REM on tour, because they were using Twitter in its early stages, and they were posting set lists of all the concerts. And that's why I joined Twitter. That's why I started being on Twitter. And the whole personal thing, is incredibly important, that there's somebody behind the keyboard doing it. And for those that, Script, I think, the Script Mag feed has a personal feel to it, because it's a person doing it, and I respond to people back and forth, and I talk to people back and forth. And there are people that just don't do that, who don't necessarily see the value in it, which I find kind of funny, because I know for a fact, I've seen the stats, Script Magazine's, everything has gone up since we've started really using our social media tools. And that's just a bold-faced fact.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
No, go ahead.
And if you're not a business, well, if you are a business, number one, you have to do what Script Mag is doing, because people get turned off in Twitter. If you want to get the word out about anything, tweet it out. Because people who have more followers than you, who happen to be following you, will probably retweet it, and then they'll retweet it. I had an issue with UPS with my jewelry business, and within 5 minutes, UPS was responding to me asking if they could, what my account name was, so that they could make things right. But on the personal side, it really is about communicating with other people. Like if somebody, and I know Jeannie's really good about this. too. But if someone replies to you, or replies you with your name in a tweet, you really need to respond back to them, unless it's something that's completely obnoxious and it's better just left alone, or when someone's trying to cause an argument. But interact with the people who have taken the time to follow you.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a business or not, and people, they respect the fact that you've taken the time to respond what they have to say, or to answer a question, or to even say I don't know. It's definitely an interaction. It's not like Facebook where it's like, here's my dog and my cat.
Mm-hmm.
I do try to respond to everybody, and the hardest day for me is Fridays. Because on Friday on Twitter, they have something called Follow Friday, where people recommend other people to follow. And so I'm blessed with a really loyal group of people who like me. And they request, they send out a Follow Friday for me. And I try very hard to thank every single person who does it. And it's, Fridays sometimes are like a job,
mm-hmm.
but it's a blessing. I appreciate it. And I gain a lot of followers that way. And when Josh was talking about Script Magazine, when Script puts out their email, with Script Weekly with a list of the new articles that are online, there's, the one I did about Scriptchat, I think within, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I had 100 new followers.
Wow.
And they were all people who found me just because Script sent out that one email. So Script's database, the people who their customers, their target audience is definitely using Twitter. There's no question.
Yay, email works. Sorry. I just had
Yeah. An email does work. For sure.
Yeah. And another thing I would say, and this is very, very, very important, is take advantage of what you can take advantage of. And I'll do just a couple of examples. One of them is, I'm just like Joshua and you guys, we're interacting with a lot of great writers. Some really, really cool people. Mm-hmm. And every Follow Friday, one of the things I do is I say, I'll follow you back if you just send me a tweet and ask me nicely. And so few people do. and if they do, they have a chance to find out about, not just finding out about interviews, but I've had people contact me and say, could you please send this message to this writer off the record? In other words, not part of a podcast, not part of anything else, but just, I want to contact this writer. And I will. I'll say, as long as it's decent, as long as it's respectful, I'll forward it on to the writer. And 100% of the time, 100% of the time, the writer is very gracious, gets back to me, usually contacts the person directly, and they set up a dialogue.
Excellent.
Wow.
So you can get us some Scriptchat guests.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but say your favorite show is V. Well, the V showrunner was on the podcast. I'd be happy to send your email directly to the showrunner. Man, if I had that resource 5-10 years ago,
yeah,
I know
that's true.
But you have to take advantage of it. I know that, on the podcast, we've had a couple of writers now that have given out their email addresses. Incredibly gracious of them to do that, to give their email address out on the podcast and say, if you want help getting ahead, contact me.
Oh, you know what? One of the latest ones you did that. I can't think of his name off the top of my head or what the show was.
Yeah, Stephen Darrenset did, as well as Matt McLennan.
It was Matt. He was incredible.
Oh, awesome guy. And definitely an authority on all the things that you can try, because he's tried everything in his screenwriting career.
He cost me money, I just want you to know. I had to buy books, all of his suggestions. Your podcasts are just, I live for them.
Well, thanks so much. But that's an example where he emailed me back and he said he got a few emails from people, but why not more? Like, take advantage when people extend this opportunity to you.
Well, I would also take that a bit farther. Like people have, I can't even remember exactly how it happened, but at some point I was given the title Twitter Pimp Angel because I pimp, which means that I promote other people's work. And I will, like, if I see somebody's blog post and I really enjoyed it, I will tweet it out and recommend to other people that they read it. Or if somebody's doing some crowdsourcing for a film and I've read the script or I have some idea of what the project is about and I truly believe in it. And that's the key to pimping is you cannot pimp crap. Like you really have to, people start to trust you. And so you have to vet what you're pimping. Like I don't pimp out blog posts that I haven't read. And, but in taking it a bit further, because I have that brand of Twitter Pimp Angel, I get a lot of DMs. I get a lot of requests of Jeanne, can you do this? Jeanne, can you do that? Jeanne, can you help me promote people? I have almost 5,000 followers. So I now have gotten to the point where I'm like, look, you do something for somebody else and then come back to me and I'll help you. Because I want people to pay it forward more instead of there's a lot of people out there who just suck it like a Hoover, and I only have so much time. Even these little requests that people send me, maybe just take 10 minutes of my time, but 10 minutes times hundreds, So I have to be more selective and that's the danger of it. When you start to have that kind of brand or that kind of be known for being generous, there's a lot of people who want from you and I'm learning now that I really have to set boundaries. And that's one of the ways I've done it is I've said to people, I put a blog post out saying, before you ask anything of me, go do something for somebody else. And people are doing it. They're paying it forward happily. But I find that Twitter in general does attract a very generous person. For the most part, maybe because it's at the baby stages.
Well, and Matt was the same way. He said, I've been so lucky to to be where I'm at. And that's, I think, when he gave out his email address was to say, I pay it forward. I would love to help someone get to where I am and show them just what to do. But along with what you were saying about why didn't more people email me? My thought on that end is I'd email him in a heartbeat, but I'm afraid. I don't want to ask people for anything. There's a few people that I've had connections with who I email back and forth who've been my mentors, and I have been really, really skeptical about asking anything from them. And if I just keep a dialogue going, then usually I've gotten to where they've said, well, what can I do for you? Where then I feel more comfortable asking for something. Mm-hmm. But I was offered an introduction to a manager, which I had been dying to ask for, but there was no way I was going to ask. And then in conversation, it came up and said, hey, you know what? I think you should meet my manager. But I would never have come right out and asked for it. And maybe that's just my personality. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I have no problem asking, but what I try to do whenever possible is when I ask of something, I try to make sure there's something that I'm able to give back. And I'm going to use Josh as a perfect example. As Josh had said, we met because of Twitter. And I strategically have on my bio that I'm from New York. So people automatically assume I'm from New York City. I live a 2-hour train ride north of New York. But Josh doesn't know that, didn't know at the time, and most people don't. And they do now. And and Josh said, hey, I'm coming to New York. How about having a cup of coffee? I was like, damn, most expensive cup of coffee I'm going to have, but I'm getting on a train and I'm going to New York. But I know Josh is a journalist. So, and he didn't really know that much about me at the time. And just Scriptchat was just a baby then. Mm-hmm. And it was over a year ago.
Yeah, it was over a year and a half ago.
But my writing partner works he's the senior national correspondent of the Wall Street Journal and Pulitzer Prize winner. And so I immediately thought, well, hot damn, if Josh is going to come to New York and I'm going to meet him for coffee, I'm going to introduce him to a Pulitzer Prize winner. Like, what journalist wouldn't want to meet one, And, mm-hmm. and then so I got Doug to come up from Atlanta And we all had lunch together, and that's where our friendship, and the first time we started talking about my, doing some sort of blog post for Script, happened. But it's, because I was purposely thinking, what little nugget can I do for him? Like that might just make it a fun day for him beyond just, us getting together and having coffee. And I try whenever I can to do that, this is what I can do for you in exchange, or let's think about what we both have to offer and bring to the table, and how can we find some synergy here that's not just beneficial to me, but that's also beneficial to you. I'm a very big believer in that.
And I can't think of a better place to end up part 1 of our discussion on social media. Pay it forward. What a great idea. Thanks so much to Joshua, Jamie, and Jeanne for joining us this week in our roundtable discussion. And you'll find the remaining 45 minutes of our discussion next week on the podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and I do urge you, if you go to tvwriterpodcast.com, you'll find all of the Twitter addresses for the participants in this podcast. I urge you to follow them on Twitter, and also you can follow me on Twitter at Gray Jones. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Graham A. Jones. Just if you do, make sure you have a little message with it explaining that you found me through the podcast, and then I'd be happy to add you to my Facebook family. But until next week, I want to wish you a very happy writing week, and I hope this podcast has been helpful. If it has, then definitely check back for part 2 next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web, and by Final Draft script writing software, the entertainment industry standard for script writing worldwide.